Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I am going to be making a bunch of watercolor backgrounds using liquid watercolors. I'll be using 3 liquid watercolors from Hero Art, and these liquid watercolors are also included in the August 2021 My Monthly Hero Kit. Here's a look at the August 2021 My Monthly Hero Kit this month. It includes a 4x6 clear stamp, 3 liquid watercolors in pink, dandelion, and indigo. There is also a stencil, a background stamp, and some coordinating dies, and I will be using some of these products from the kit. I'm going to start off by creating the watercolor backgrounds so that we give them time to dry. And while those are drying, I'm also going to have a few cards where I did some ink blending on posts that I shared earlier this week. So stay tuned for that. The first thing I'm going to do is I have a piece of watercolor paper here that is taped down to a hard board, and I am spritzing that with some water and then spreading that water out with a paintbrush. Now disregard that palette of watercolor off on the side. Now I'm taking the liquid watercolors from Hero Arts. Now these are little bottles that have a dropper to them, and I'm just going to drop a few drops of those colors onto my wet background. So a wet on wet technique, and you can tell it's wet because that ink is spreading. Now I want this to spread just a little bit more. So once I have my colors added, I'm going to spritz this with some water to really help those colors move. I place these in a certain order. I have the pink, dandelion, indigo, and then some more pink because when those colors blend, it's going to make another color, which I think is where the magic happens. Now, a little trick that I learned from a fellow crafty friend, Shannon, is using this puffer tool. Now, this is a tool that you either get in a camera kit or Tim Holtz has one. This is the Tim Holtz version, and I'm taking that, squeezing the top of it, and it's moving that liquid watercolor around. So that is why I added so much water to it, and is also why I'm using watercolor paper. Now I'm moving that around with the puffs of air. I'm also tilting my board to help those colors move naturally into each other. And you can see I'm getting that mix of color where it's got the orange, the green, and then some purple. So this first one is my rainbow background, and I'm just going to dab up any excess water that's kind of dripping off the edges, wipe that up with the paper towel, and I'm going to set this off on the side to dry. Now I only have one hard board, so I also like to use a Misty tool. I just tape my watercolor paper to the Misty tool. I have a few backgrounds I'm going to share with you. Not all of them got turned into cards. For example, this one, I just wanted to show you the mix of the blue and yellow, making the green, and just moving those colors around with that puffer tool. And then when you tip it, you can see how it's got that natural movement of color down the cardstock. Now, if you were to take a heat tool and just kind of carefully go over it, that's going to immediately set the watercolor. So if you let it air dry, you might get a little bit of a different look versus if you speed up that drying process on your own. So here's another background with a little bit of a twist. I sprayed it with the water, and I'm also spraying it with the white iridescent shimmer spray, which just added something really neat to the background. Now this one, I kind of wanted more of a purplish or galaxy type of look. So I have the pink, the indigo, and then some more pink, adding some more water and also some more of that shimmer spray. I'm really not using a ton of that shimmer spray, so a little bit really goes a long way. And you can see as I'm moving that color with that puffer tool or the blower tool, whatever you want to call it, it's just moving all of those colors together. So after I have all of these kind of moved around, I want to show you something that I thought was really cool, and I'm not really sure why it did it, but it was a ton of fun to watch happen. I'm bringing in my heat tool to kind of dry this, and look at those white spots just popping up through the color. I don't know why it did that, but it was really cool. That's the white iridescent shimmer spray. So I don't know if it didn't mix well with the water, but it looked really cool. So I left it as is, and I'm letting it air dry. Now, right now, I am just really going through and experimenting and playing with these liquid watercolors. It creates backgrounds really quick and easy. The longest part is really the wait time on the drying time. So as these are drying, I'm going to work on other cards that I'll show you in just a moment. But this one is the pink and the dandelion, which makes a very vibrant background. Now, once again, just adding little bits of water. That is all at your discretion and just kind of playing and having fun. how much water you want to add, how much movement you want, but definitely I recommend tilting your boards to help kind of give that natural movement as well. So while these are drying, I'm going to work on some ink blending. Now this is the stencil from the My Monthly Hero Kit, and you can see it has some very thin lines to it. So the best way to adhere this to do some stenciling is use pixie spray. It is a low tack spray adhesive. You just spray it all over the back of your stencil, let it sit for about a minute, and then that stencil is going to be tacky. Once my stencil is ready, I am going to attach it to a piece of Dove White cardstock that I have cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So it is a little bit smaller than my actual stencil. Place the stencil over that and then just make sure you're pushing down really, really well over those lines. We want to make sure this is really adhered to the cardstock and that it doesn't shift at all while we're doing some ink blending. Now for this, I am working on a waffle flower media mat. This is a silicone mat. The reason I chose this is because the silicone kind of helps keep my cardstock in place. So I don't have to worry about magnets on top of my project, and I don't have to worry about my cardstock sliding all over while I'm ink blending. So I'm starting off with some rainbow colors. These are all in the reactive inks from Hero Arts using a blending brush. I started with taffy, creamsicle, and then I have a lemon drop, I believe it was called, and then I will move on to key lime fizz. Now at any point you can pick up and move your cardstock, move your paper. Just be a little mindful of the colors that are on the media mat if you don't want to contaminate your ink blended panel. You might want to wipe up your colors in between with a wet cloth or a baby wipe. Now you can see here that one area wasn't stuck down very well, so I am being just really, really careful with this pool party and my blending brush. I kind of moved it and I'm just going to hold it down on one end and I'm just going really, really light-handed. This area did take me a little bit longer because I was being so careful, but it did work out. And then I'm finishing off my rainbow with Purple Galaxy. Once that's all blended, I can just carefully peel back my stencil and we have this gorgeous background with those white lines from the stencil on there. Now I did ink blend another panel off screen. This time I'm using the Rays of Color stencil. This is an add-on this month from Hero Arts. I'm also going to spray this with the pixie spray, line that up over my background. Now for this one, I used the lemon drop, creamsicle, and taffy, just making sure to push that down really well. And this time I'm spritzing over that stencil with the white iridescent shimmer spray. This just adds a little bit of a subtle look to that background, and I'll set that off on the side to dry for just a moment. Now that I have all of these backgrounds, I'm going to start turning them into cards, starting with this Together Window Fancy Die. I'm lining this up over some Dove White cardstock that is already cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I held that die in place with low tack tape and ran it through my die cut machine, and you can see it's got these great hands all around the window. So I have that panel that I'm going to line up over that background I created with the white iridescent shimmer spray. I lined my panel with foam tape and added that to my background. And I have a sentiment here that I heat embossed on white cardstock in gold glitter embossing powder. And that sentiment comes from the Better Together stamp set. Then to finish this card off, I just have some Icicle sequins mix and some sparkle lacquer pen in the center. The next card I'm going to finish off is that ink blended background we did using the stencil from the My Monthly Hero Kit. This time I'm just going to add flicks of the white Glimmer metallic ink. I put a couple drops down on my surface, added a couple drops of water, and I'm just flicking that all over the background with a paintbrush. Then I trimmed that panel down and added it to an A2 size note card using some foam tape. And a sentiment here that I also heat embossed in the gold glitter embossing powder onto pitch black cardstock, and this sentiment comes from the stamp set in the kit. Now I'm going to move on to creating some cards with the watercolor backgrounds that I did. So this is that rainbow background I thought would look really great with the rainbow window fancy die. So there is an oval piece that you can use with it, or just die cut out this rainbow piece directly from Dove White cardstock, which is what I did here. The cardstock front is measuring 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just looking through the window on what part of my watercolor background I want to use. Now the best part is I can just trim that watercolor panel down and I can save those scrap pieces for something else. So for this card, I added a sentiment to the bottom that is from the Better Together stamp set, and I actually turned it into a shaker card, which you can do with any of the window fancy dies. Now the next couple cards that I'm going to share is using the Rays of Color fancy die. I die cut it from gold glitter cardstock and also from some white cardstock. And what's really fun is you can do a really cool die cut inlay technique with this. To add these die cut pieces to my watercolor panels, I'll just be using the Hero Arts Precision Glue. The sentiments I used are from the Rainbow Heroscape. They were perfect little strip sentiments to add to the front of the card that I heat embossed with white embossing powder onto pitch black cardstock. This is another example of the watercolor background with that Rays of Color die, except die cut from white cardstock. And this one is using the Solar Flare die cut from some holographic cardstock. So there are a ton of ideas for you, some of which are using watercolor backgrounds, using the liquid watercolors, and also products from the My Monthly Hero Kit for August 2021 from Hero Arts. All of my supplies today used in the video will be listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you again real soon.